Alright, so we're going to continue our talk about space exploration by talking about the first rockets. Okay, rockets were invented by Chinese thousands of years ago. Alright, so these rockets were used for warfare and for fireworks. And for thousands of years, that's all rockets were used for, mainly for warfare, but, you know, fireworks, everybody loves fireworks and they're beautiful. Rockets were mainly used in Asia for a long time, and because of Genghis Khan, the ancient Mongolian conqueror, going across Asia to Europe, he was actually the one that brought the idea of rockets to Europe. And like I said, for a long time, you know, rockets were things that looked like this one right here. I mean, we still use those today. Fireworks still look like that. They have some gunpowder for fuel, and they go up and they explode. And you can either point them up in the sky and make pretty fireworks at night, or you can point them at your enemy if you're during war and try to blow up your enemy with them. Okay, so the real science of rocketry was born out of science fiction. Now, isn't that amazing? I mean, most of the time, science fiction follows science and uses things that are going on in science, but predicts what maybe happens in the future. Well, the science of rocketry actually was born from science fiction. We had two authors in the late 1800s, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Okay, they were the first people to write fiction about space travel, and of course it's, you know, what we call today science fiction, but they wrote some very interesting novels about space travel, and people started thinking, wow, how could this be possible? Is that even possible? I mean, before this, really no one had ever thought about going into space. I mean, you got to think about it. These people were writing about space travel before air travel had even been invented. You know, it wasn't until 1901 when we had the first airplane from the Wright brothers, and these people are already writing about space travel. Okay, so around 1900, a Russian high school teacher named Konstantin Tsiolkovsky wrote the first book suggesting that rockets could be used to explore space. Okay, this guy isn't a university professor. He's not a scientist, really. He's a high school science teacher. And he wrote a book saying, you know, if humans want to explore space, we need to use rockets. And you know, this was the first of its kind. Nobody had ever really thought of that. I mean, rockets were for fireworks, for shooting at people. No one had ever thought about using them to go into space. All right. So, with the first modern rockets, okay, Dr. Robert Goddard was one of the first people to build and fly liquid-fueled rockets in the 1920s, okay. Today, he's known as the father of modern rocketry. His work inspired other scientists who later built the first rockets to reach space, okay. This guy was a professor in Massachusetts, and he started building rockets that used liquid fuels like gasoline instead of, you know, solid fuels like gunpowder. And he also built rockets that had different stages, meaning, you know, after the fuel burnt out in one stage, then a second stage would light up and keep going. All right, this was really new stuff at the time. In fact, he actually had to move. He moved from Massachusetts to New Mexico, where he could be somewhere that was you know, a lot less populated, where he had an open space to shoot off his rockets, and his work inspired other people in Europe and Russia to continue on. But at this time, you know, rocketry was still new, and it was mostly being explored by people who were, you know, amateurs. They were scientists, but, you know, it wasn't a government that was building the rockets. It was these clubs. You know, there was a school in Russia that was working on building rockets, but in Germany, the people that were working on rockets at that time were part of a club. They were doing it for fun. It was a hobby. All right, that's really different than what we do now. All right, so from the 20s up until about World War II, which started in 1939 in Europe, and from and for 1941 for the United States. Now we had a serious rocket being built. Okay, it was called the V2 rocket, and it was built in the 1940s, from 1941 to 1945. It was built by Germany during this World War II, and it was built as a weapon. Okay, now this is an actual picture of a V2 rocket that was taking off in Germany. All right, now this is starting to look like a rocket, or what we think of as a rocket today. All right, it was the first rocket that could possibly reach the edge of space. All right, so it's serious. It can really go a long way. Of course, Germany at this time was in the middle of World War II, and they used the V2 rocket to bomb England, Belgium, and France, and the Netherlands. All right, of course, you know, this was a very dangerous weapon. Because it was traveling so fast. It was traveling faster than the speed of sound when it came down, and the people who were being bombed had no idea it was coming, because it would hit and explode before you could even hear it falling. Alright, so it was a very sophisticated rocket, but it was being used for a terrible purpose. Okay, and of course, Germany was defeated in World War II. And when Germany was defeated, the United States and Soviet Union used captured V2 rockets and the scientists who built them to start space programs in both countries. Okay, so we got scientists, the Soviet Union, which is Russia, got scientists, and we used them to start our space programs. Okay, it's very interesting. The main scientist for the V2 rocket, Wernher von Braun, he actually came to the United States and helped us build rockets, and worked for NASA later and built, you know, the main rockets that NASA used to start our space program. Okay, the basic design for the V2 rocket motor is still used in rockets today. I mean, this rocket motor, it was older and simpler, but you know, this design is still used in making rocket engines on the rockets that we use to launch spacecraft today. And you know, this rocket made actual exploration of space possible, when before all we could do was look through telescopes. Okay, so the United States captured some of these rockets and brought them here, and they were some of the first rockets ever to actually go into space, and it was all because of this rocket. All right. So, now we need to talk about the space race. After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union were in a space race to be the first to explore space. Okay, so we know already that we used captured German rockets, and then the scientists that built them to start our own space programs. Okay, so why do we have a space race? Okay, why are we trying? Well, first of all, the United States and the Soviet Union did not get along. We weren't at an actual war, but it was what was called the Cold War for many years, and we built up a large military. They built up a large military, and of course we needed weapons to protect ourselves from them, and they needed weapons, they thought, to protect themselves from us. And of course they had nuclear weapons, and that what they really wanted, instead of dropping nuclear bombs with airplanes, they wanted rockets or missiles to shoot nuclear missiles, to shoot nuclear bombs at each other, and that's why they were interested in the rockets. The actual race, though, to get to space was really just a way for these two countries to use the missiles that they were building for civilian and scientific purposes. Okay, think about it. I mean, people aren't really happy when the government is just spending all this money just to build weapons or missiles, you know. And so both countries thought, well, you know, since we're building these missiles to shoot bombs at each other, those same rockets could be used to explore space. So if we did that, then we're kind of like, it's kind of like we're spending our money for space instead of missiles, but they actually could use them for both. So both the countries started space programs because it made it look better, okay, than just building missiles.